The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Stephen Corsaro here with the National Sports Forum. Welcome to our monthly webinar. We're very pleased and excited to have you all joining us once again. And for all of you veterans here for the webinars, we're very excited to have you guys back. For the noobs on the webinar here, welcome. So as you guys may know, each month we try to take a different topic and really kind of take our thoughts and our twist on where the industry is going for certain segments of sports business. Last month we had the pleasure of doing something on emerging technologies and really understanding where the industry is going in a sense of technology. We had three very interesting and unique panelists give their takes on that. So this month we're very excited to bring on one of our partners here in BRC Imagination Arts, as well as the Milwaukee Brewers, who have long-time ties with us. Kathy Schwab, who's the Director of Marketing, has been on our board for many years here. And we're lucky to have Tyler Barnes here with the VP of Communications. So we're really excited to have a really good webinar today on the in-field experience. And more specifically, we have BRC talking about one of the things that they're doing with the Milwaukee Brewers, which is creating emotional fan experiences and the art of storytelling and how important it is to really be able to tell a story that sinks in with the fans. So one of the things that I've been lucky to see is BRC's creative juices flowing with the Milwaukee Brewers in the SELIG experience that they created at Miller Park. So I was lucky enough to go up to BRC Studios up in LA this spring and really get to feel the experience from their studios, and I can only imagine it's that much better in Miller Park. So we're very excited to be able to do an in-depth case study on what the Brewers are doing, the story behind it, and how the fans are receiving it, and how we might be able to take that with our organizations and really try to understand how can we be telling our stories, what is the story that needs to be told, and how we're going to be able to integrate our brands, our corporate partners, our fans, and our staff into it and really get behind this. So that being said, I wanted to take this time to introduce three very great panelists that we have today. First up would be Tyler Barnes, who, as I mentioned, is the Vice President of Communications for the Milwaukee Brewers. Tyler is in his 11th season with the Brewers, and before that, he was the Chief Marketing Officer at the Harlem Globetrotters. So currently, Tyler oversees media relations, community relations, broadcasting, publications, new media, and brewers.com. So we're very excited to have Tyler on and be able to walk us through what they're doing with the SELIG experience, what their thoughts were behind it, and why they really needed to feel that they needed to create this to go that extra mile to engage their fans and create that extra layer of engagement to bring their fans into Miller Park. Additionally, we have Christian Lachelle, who's the Executive Creative Director at BRC Imagination Arts. So Christian's going to really walk us through how BRC approaches the art of storytelling with all of their clients, not just the Brewers, but clients such as Ford Motors, Heineken, so on and so forth. So some great work that they've been doing in the industry, and where they start at the drawing board and how that translates into the final result, such as the experience. And then lastly, we have Brad Shelton, who is also with BRC and is the creative director and was really kind of the chief architect here, if I'm not mistaken, with the SELIG experience in the creative aspect of things. So we're very excited to have all three panelists on board. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Tyler here, who's going to walk you through a little bit of the background for the SELIG experience, and then loop in Brad and Christian as well to kind of give their take as to how they made it such a successful experience for fans. That being said, Tyler, you're up.
Thanks Stephen. I'm getting an echo on my phone. Can that be eliminated?
Tyler, if you can get off speakerphone, that might help with the...
I'm not on speakerphone.
Seems like it's a little better now.
Okay. I'm still getting a pretty bad echo. But I'll plug through. and we'll see how it works. I appreciate having the opportunity to be on the call here. The SELIG experience became, maybe I think I'm gonna call back in because the echo on this end is really, really bad.
I think we've got that. Tyler, I think we have it figured out. Is that better?
No.
Okay. Sorry about that.
See if it's better now. No. It's coming through on my phone only. I have the sound down on my computer. Okay.
Tyler, can you try again and see if that worked?
Sure. No, it's still
Still going to reverb.
It has not changed.
You have your audio on your computer muted, Tyler?
I do.
Interesting.
Sorry, everyone.
Let's see.
Stick with us while we're dealing with technical difficulties.
I think it's gone now.
Oh, okay.
So I apologize if it was user error. I apologize on my end as well. But thanks for your patience, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this. And when Brad asked me to do this last week, I was thrilled. This project was something that was a very, very special event for all of us here to work on. And when we started out, there were really two goals that we were looking at. One was to honor the commissioner with his deep ties to Milwaukee baseball. And then the second goal was to honor the fans of baseball in Milwaukee. Baseball has tremendous roots in Milwaukee. We like to think that our fans over-deliver in their support of the team, and we like to pay them back. The key was, when would be the right time to do this, and why did we decide a couple years ago was the right time? And very simply, the commissioner had announced that he was retiring from his position as commissioner of baseball. He was moving into the commissioner emeritus role. And the fact that we had an opportunity, he still lives in Milwaukee and attends a lot of Brewers games and is very, very close to the franchise. So it was a perfect time to do something for him when he announced his retirement, and we proceeded with that plan. As I said, the commissioner, he doesn't just have deep baseball roots in Milwaukee. He has very, very deep roots to the community as a whole. And we really wanted to, this was driven largely by our Chief Operating Officer, Rick Schlesinger. He wanted to do something really big. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be something that is tremendously expensive or on a huge footprint. He just wanted to do something that was unique. And so that was really what we set out to do to recognize the commissioner's commitment to baseball and the fans in Milwaukee. So what we came up with was BRC came up with a general theme that I remember from this day. I think it was the first time we met them, where the first thing was to come up with a sort of a statement that would begin this whole process. And the statement that I remember very well was, Bud Selig did this for you, the fans and the community and the game. And that's really where we started the process. But the idea behind all this obviously was the city itself had lost baseball back in the 1950s or 1960s. The Braves had moved to Milwaukee, and really the commissioner at that point was the one person who was committed to bringing baseball back to Milwaukee, and it was his his incredible determination that made it a reality. The location and the impeccable timing. We have a ballpark here that in a second phase rescued baseball in Milwaukee. Without building Miller Park, baseball most likely would have left Milwaukee, and the commissioner really was obviously a huge, huge part in getting that done during his ownership of the Brewers. We had the space to do something unique. As you'll see here in a minute, it was not a huge space, but we did have space, and the timing, as we talked about, was perfect given his retirement. So where do we start? The genesis for this really started with our general manager came up with this idea that seemed to have an interesting bit of merit to it. He knew that the commissioner had this very, very messy office when the team was in County Stadium, and he thought it would be a great tribute to him to recreate that office, which we thought was sort of a fun idea, but we thought, you know, it needs a little bit more of a hook than that. And coincidentally, around that time, our chief operating officer had gone down to the Lincoln Museum in Springfield, Illinois, and had seen what was really a fantastic multimedia presentation, a series of multimedia presentations that's part of the museum down there. And so his first call was to find out who did that, and it turned out it was BRC. So BRC was our next call. As we talked about, BRC came to town. We started with a charrette where we had terrific dialogue going back and forth, but also on that first day we did a tour of the location that we had envisioned, and it was a dusty, abandoned, and very, very infrequently used bar in the upper part of Miller Park. The footprint was not ideal in terms of how it was laid out, and it was not a big space either. Certainly not what you would typically look at for a traditional museum. But as I said, so we got a good feel for the footprint, and then we had these series of charrettes and meetings where we went back and forth with BRC. Really our message and our guiding principle on this was we wanted to do something unique, and as this presentation was titled, emotional. That's the one word that I keep coming back to with this, something that would really resonate not just with baseball fans, but really the entire community and beyond that. Anybody who enjoys baseball, anybody who loves a good story, we wanted them to be able to see this and pull something from it that would be meaningful to them, even if they weren't from Milwaukee, even if they weren't a baseball fan. What we really didn't want, which I think was just as important, was a bunch of, and I believe this is BRC's term, a bunch of dead stuff behind glass. We didn't want something that was going to be specifically just artifacts that people would come in, spend 10 minutes looking around, see it one time, and never come back to. We wanted something that was truly special. So after a number of meetings and getting together, BRC came back to us with a presentation that we really felt like captured exactly what we were looking for. You can't call it a film, you can't call it a museum. It truly is a multimedia presentation that you can see on the next series of slides. We did incorporate, at the end of the day, that original idea of recreating Commissioner Selig's old office, but it became so much more than that. And as you'll see on the next series of slides here, these were renderings that were put in place fairly early in the process. And as we move through the slides, you'll see this really came to life, very similar to what we were looking at here. The process of getting from the renderings to the reality was fascinating. BRC appointed a person, a gentleman named Steven Strawson, who I became very good friends with. He was calling me multiple times a day and challenging us to find the very best materials that we could, not only as artifacts for the old office and also a small room where we do have some historical items, but also footage. We spent hours and hours and days in libraries looking through video that had not been seen since the 1960s. And BRC was terrific, and they challenged us, and they challenged themselves to not just find the dusty old VHS tape that was created back in 1982 that was a special on the Brewers winning the pennant that year. It was going back and finding not just the original program that aired, but finding the actual footage that was shot back 30-some years ago. And it was truly a challenge to find the absolute best quality. And as you can see when you go into what they built, the vision that they created in those first series of meetings became more than a reality. They really over-delivered in everything that they did. The highlight of it, yes, there is a film presentation that's on multiple screens, and you have different things going on all around you. Very difficult to describe without seeing it. And then as you move towards the end, there's actually a hologram of Commissioner SELIG that looks 100% authentic. You would think that he is in the room with you and speaking to you from his old office. After the multimedia presentation, you round the corner, you see his office. You actually see a cigarette that's sitting in a holder and smoke coming off of the cigarette, and his phone is ringing. It's really an authentic experience that is like nothing else that we've ever seen. I think the true testament to this, I mean, it is a beautiful, beautiful place. But going in there, and I have seen the presentation probably 50 times now, and more often than not, I'm in there with people that are not Brewers fans. They may not be baseball fans, but it is an emotional experience. We see people coming out of there in tears, people that have absolutely no connection to the Brewers, but the power of the story that they tell and what they put together is absolutely phenomenal. So we couldn't have been happier working with BRC. We've become great friends with them. We're looking at working with them on additional projects down the road, and I think they have just created something that's phenomenal. I think the last slide that you'll see here is just some of the social media responses that have been gathered from fans that have seen the SELIG experience. We still, obviously, it's operational every day during the season, and we still have hundreds of people go through the experience before and during games whenever the team is playing at Miller Park or during tours.
Cool. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
This is Stephen. I just had a quick question for you, and I mean, I've been lucky enough, as I mentioned, to be able to see the SELIG experience. Unfortunately, you're not in Miller Park, but BRC, you know, if anyone has a chance to get up to the studios, you know, really, really great stuff. And to your point, you know,
Yeah.
I felt an emotional connection, not being a Brewers fan, but being a baseball fan, and what you guys did was just phenomenal. Which leads me to my question. Understanding, you know, we've been lucky enough to work with the Brewers for many years now, and if anyone has on this call has been out to the forum, you'll know just the quality of work that the Brewers do. I want to say that you guys have won our advertising award 5 straight years for overall excellence, which is just phenomenal. So just out of curiosity, you guys seem to set the bar extremely high with the SELIG experience. How does the quality of your work with BRC and the SELIG experience translate into how you approach other aspects of your business, whether it be fan engagement or corporate partnership activation? You know, now that you've seen the SELIG experience, it really does set the bar for higher quality and higher standards for you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Stephen. I think we are really driven by our ownership to, you know, it sounds a little bit like a cliche, but when he purchased the team about a dozen years ago, he made 4 promises to the community, and one of them involves creating the best fan experience possible. So what he has really challenged us to do is not necessarily just look at dollars and cents, and clearly, you know, return on investment is very important, but he has a firm belief that if you build it, they will come, but you have to do it right to get them to come back. And he is not one to say, look, you know, I want to do this, but I want to do it at the least expensive that we can do it, or the smallest footprint. He really challenges everyone here to dream big and believes that if we put the right things in place, that the fans are going to over-deliver on their support of the team, win or lose. And we've seen this year, this is a rebuilding year for us. We've really seen the fans still support the team in huge, huge numbers. We like to think that part of that is because we've created some things with great partners like BRC, with the SELIG experience, and other things in the ballpark.
Absolutely. Well, we definitely appreciate you walking us through that. And for those that are on the call, one thing that we will be doing with BRC this year is giving you guys the ability to see the SELIG experience firsthand with something that we're going to be doing on site in Minneapolis, which is going to be the BRC Imagination Theater. So BRC will actually be creating a theater on site where you guys can see, I want to say it's about 25 minutes long, the entire SELIG experience amongst other studio productions that they've done. But very moving stuff, really innovative, and we're really excited to roll this out this year at the National Sports Forum in Minneapolis. And that being said, I want to transition here from Tyler and turn it over to Brad and Christian here to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight as to how they really go about their approach from a storytelling aspect. So guys, I'll turn it over to you here.
Great. And Christian and I are just going to kind of go back and forth here, so we won't bother telling you each time who's talking. You'll have to guess, and we'll just we'll do our best.
That was Brad, and this is Christian. So, one of the things that we thought that as we've been working with the sports teams and our great experience with the Brewers was, a storytelling playbook. That's really kind of what we're going to talk about today, and really why stories matter. But if we go to the next slide. We do a lot of work with brands around the world, from Coca-Cola to Heineken to sports teams, and one of the things that we do a lot is looking at where the industry is going. We were recently in London at a backlash culture briefing, and this is coming up again and again, no matter who we're working with, is in the new era of emo-diversity, brands that design memorable, poignant, and surprising experiences is important, will win by increasing a sense of deep audience connection. And everything that we're doing is to really deepen the loyalty that fans have to the brand or the team. And we think there's a lot that can be done in this space that you have great stories and stories that really resonate. So what can we do to sort of bring those things to life?
So great. So if you want to go on to the next slide, Stephen. So, at our core, the thing that kind of drives everything we do is this notion that stories matter. The way we communicate with each other is through stories. The way culture has been built is through stories. And, as Christian and Tyler and Stephen mentioned, we tend to work with, a lot of the big brands in the world, brands like Coca-Cola and Heineken, Caterpillar, and, one of the things that's been very interesting for us as we've gotten into the sports world is that, it's not easy to necessarily find the heart of a story for a company like Caterpillar. It's there, but you have to dig. But in the sports world, you guys have more drama on a typical Saturday afternoon than most brands have sometimes in their entire existence. And yet, until very recently, there hasn't really been an attempt to embrace that drama, to really create stories that matter for your guests off the field. Tyler mentioned what we like to kind of refer to as dead things in boxes. I mean, if you go to a lot of these kind of sports Hall of Fames and things now, there's stuff that has meaning for the diehard fans. They know what that jersey means. They know what that trophy means. But it's really just stuff in boxes behind lights. And one of the things that we so appreciated about working with the Brewers was that they understood that the way that they could maintain and grow the emotional connections with guests was to tell a story that would matter to guests. And, one of the most rewarding things about going to the SELIG experience is that people, every time I've been there, people, when they walk out of there, they're crying, and then they're posting things on social media like, I didn't even know I was a baseball fan, but I walked out of there a lifelong Brewers fan. And so finding those stories that connect for your fans is the way to kind of engage them in a way that will expand that relationship beyond game day. So as we can go to the next slide, Stephen. So as we work on projects, as we kind of work with our clients, you know, the heart of what we're doing is trying to help them figure out what is your story, what is the story you want to tell, and how are we going to find it. Now, in sports, you know, you're lucky because every team has a story to tell, whether it's a new team that suddenly exists like Minnesota United in the MLS, right, that is suddenly now an MLS team because of the community support that has been built up over a long period of time. So even though they're new, they've got this kind of historical background that allows a story to be told, or it's a team that's been around forever, like the Red Sox or the Yankees, that has this real history. Every team, because of the role they play in the community, has a story to tell. One of the great things about sports teams, about brands, is that those stories come from authentic places, right? You know, a lot of times when we work with a brand trying to create emotional connections with that brand home, can be challenging. But what sports teams have that no other brand really that we've worked with has, except maybe Guinness, a couple places like that, is that your home is like church to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, right? I was recently in Barcelona and went to Camp Nou, and I've never seen anything like it. I did the daytime tour, and people stepped out on the field and started to cry.
Yeah.
No other brand can do that.
Right. And I think it's an important distinction that, you know, often we talk about a stadium, but the way that we see these places is they are a brand home. They are the place where these stories resonate. It's the place that the fans call home. It's where the players call home, whether they're retired and they come back. But it is a home. It's something that encapsulates a welcome, the full emotions of a place that's very special and dear to the hearts of the fan.
Yeah, one of the other things that you have really a lot of in the sports world are these unforgettable moments, right? You have moments that happen every week that told through the right lens are really unforgettable. What the Brewers did really well in the SELIG experience is they allowed for those moments to be both the positive and the negative. I mean, the lesson you get from the hero's journey, from Joseph Campbell, really from any sense of kind of how we've learned to tell stories in the West, is that the only way your hero really becomes a hero is by traversing both the highs and the lows. You have to have those lows in order to become heroic. And one of the things that the Brewers allowed us to do, which can be difficult for brands, is to talk about the hard times too, and the overcoming of those hard times, so that the show isn't just a highlight reel. The other thing that you guys have that every sports team I know of has is just stories of inspiring people. You've got the best athletes in the world for the sports that you're in doing these incredible things, but then you also have, as part of that, these incredible fans, these fans who are emotionally engaged with your team and are equally as inspiring. You know, one of the things that happened when the Brewers came to us was, you know, when they initially came to us, they said, hey, we want to do something to honor Bud. And Tyler, I don't know if you remember this, but we said, no, that's not what you want to do. What are you talking about? And we said, no, you want to honor your fans. We're going to tell the story of the fans using Bud's life as the through line, but who we're celebrating are your fans, because none of this would be possible without them. And I don't know how many of you have actually been to Milwaukee, but Milwaukee is really kind of an incredible baseball town. It reminds me, their relationship to baseball reminds me of a lot of European cities' relationship to their soccer teams, to their football teams. You can't go anywhere during the baseball season without people talking about what's happening with the Brewers. And what I think the Brewers have done really well, and that the SELIG experience really helps to underscore, is leveraging that relationship with fans, and not just leveraging it in a crass way, leveraging it by celebrating them, by acknowledging the important role that they play in the ongoing development of the team. So all of that leads us to kind of the process we go through as we start to search out those stories. You know, how do you want to tell your team's story? Christian.
So the way we look at that, if we can go to the next slide, is we always start just as Brad was mentioning. We start with the heart of the fan. We start with the heart of the audience, and looking at the things that are most important to them. What are their hopes? What are their dreams? What are their desires? What will engage them? What are the stories that provide that deep emotional engagement? Where are their passions, and sort of how do we tap into those deep primal emotions? And ultimately, it's about love. It's about finding the things that connect us, the things that bind us together across generations. You know, growing up in Chicago, my father was a big White Sox fan, and he and I always bonded over Carlton Fisk, and I was a catcher as a kid, and we connected over these great players and the love for the sport. And then so finding and looking at the heart of the audience, like we did with the SELIG experience, and on the other side, looking at the heart of the brand, looking at the heart of the team. What's the great heritage in the stories that are sort of timeless, that sort of have the great emotions that sort of bring that story to life in a way that's powerful. What do we do in the here and now? The things that the team is doing today that connect with across generations, and those stars that make the difference in the community. And what's happening in the community? What are the goals? So what we look at is trying to define both of those things. We look at how do we define measurable objectives. What are the key performance indicators and objectives of the audience, the objectives of the brand, and where those two things align to create sort of the heart of the audience and the experience. And when we start, we do a lot of work up front. We were talking about that charrette process to really define those objectives, make sure they're measurable, and then take us through what we call an exercise called A to A prime, which is the next slide. So what we do is we look at the A on the left as our audience, and we try to deeply understand them. We spend time, we look at insights, we spend time with the teams to understand who they are, what they want, what's exciting them, what are their dreams, and then once we know that, we craft the story experience that can happen in a lot of different ways. It could be, in the case of the Brewers, a very small, underused, or under-leveraged space within the stadium that we could find a way to create a great fan experience. Sometimes it's something that may happen in a larger scale, smaller scale, a variety of different ways we bring that story to life. And then we look at the change. We look at what we call A to A prime. That change needs to be that measurable objectives that we talked about. And until you understand what you're trying to achieve, as Yogi Berra said, unless you have a roadmap, you don't know where you're going. So we really spent a lot of time understanding what is that change, what's that difference. And we know that change is really a couple things that we can measure. One is advocacy. How do we deepen the loyalty to the brand, to the team, and sort of build an advocacy program and platform? How do we look at a shift in attitude? For some people who have come to the Brewers, the SELIG experience, they weren't even baseball fans, but they come away now wanting to be baseball fans. So that's even a shift in attitude towards the sport, and definitely towards the team. We look at how do we create a great sort of set of actions. What do we want people to do? Another A is, do we want them to spend more money in the store? Of course we do. We definitely want to sell some great jerseys, but we want them to do things as a result. We want them to come back. We want them to feel like this is their home. And the other thing is we know as part of that A is applause. We have to give people a great experience that they talk about that brings them from what we call from a cheer to a tier. You know, something that does both of those things at the same time, and that's what we spend a lot of time trying to define and work with our clients to define those objectives and really craft an experience that's going to deliver on that. So some of the ways that we do that is we found a couple of keys to the fan's heart that we call emotional engagement. Next slide. So some of those keys are, we'll just explain some of them. Next slide. The first is to start with the heart, and we've already talked about that. That's one of the keys to fan engagement and developing an experience like this. The second is to really know your destination. That's really defining those objectives, and we'll go into a little bit of these in more detail. The next one is to find a single strong theme. Look at ways to engage all the senses. Like you said, we don't want it to just be something that's a glass case and objects in a gallery, but we want to do something that emotionalizes that.
Just quickly too, what's really important about that strong theme is that it helps to define your choices in whatever you're doing, so that, you know, a lot of times you go into these say a Hall of Fame, and there doesn't seem to be a clear message, and that theme helps to define that clear message. You know, for the SELIG show, that theme was Milwaukee loves baseball, because we knew that we didn't want to just make it about Bud, and so what that did for us is informed every choice, so that we knew that every choice had to be about the embrace that the city and the fans had for that team.
Right. So why don't we go through each of these? We've actually got a couple of slides. So we'll go to the first one, next slide. So let's talk a little bit about starting with the heart. You know, that's really, you know, building those authentic relationships with your fans. You know, that was the thing that I shared, you know, with my father, you know, growing up in Chicago, and whether it was the Blackhawks or the Sox, it was always trying to find a way to sort of connect with the things that we enjoy together. If Grandpa would come, it would be something that was important. But we always had emotion in our heart about the team. So always start with the heart. And it's not necessarily the story you want to tell. Your need to tell doesn't give me a reason to want to listen. It's really about finding the things that are in their hearts that we can bring to life and sort of amplify and sort of deliver on. Next. We talked about this before. Know your destination. You know, we have great places and great history, but until you really define those objectives and understand exactly what you want to achieve, you're likely to end up someplace else. And it's really important that you take the time when you're developing a fan experience of any scale or size, whether it's something like this, that if you don't define it, you're likely to end up someplace else. And it's important that you get those down. And then the thing is, what's really critical is to then, since those objectives are measurable, is to be able to go back and see how you're doing against it. It becomes your scorecard against the investment that you've made. And we do a lot of things to measure that post-experience. One of the ways we look at is how are people responding. We showed a little bit of that earlier with the SELIG experience.
Now, if we could all just sing Rocky Top as we look at this Tennessee touchdown.
Okay, good. Sorry, he's from Tennessee. Sorry about that. All right, next is going back. Next slide. If we go back to that single strong theme, this is something that is important in every great story. Whether we're talking about Titanic, or we're looking at Harry Potter, or we're looking at a team's story, there's always a central theme that holds it all together. And if you have too many themes or too many messages, the audience gets really confused. So this really becomes an important compass, what we call almost like a story compass for everything you choose to talk about, the things that the stories that you create experiences around. It's important to have that strong central theme identified. And boy, they're all great stories and experiences have that strong central theme at their core. The next is to look at creating a great emotional journey. You know, inherent in all of these, all the teams that are probably on this call and in the places that we've gone around the world, you know, there's a way to create something that gives you what we call an emotional arc. You have it on a game day. You know, there's that sort of pre-anticipation, tailgating, and sort of, you know, getting ready for the game, and then arriving, and of course the highs and lows of making a great play, and then sort of hopefully you won, and if you didn't, then there's, you know, there's a different emotional journey at the end. But we think that instead of, you know, just having an exhibition or a museum, that the actual emotional experience, the physical experience, can also have that same great emotional arc. It doesn't have to just be on game day. It can be, how do you create a tour through your stadium, that your brand home, that has the same highs and lows of a great day, you know, watching a great match? It should, and it can.
And if you do that right, what happens is when people leave that, they feel like that place is their home. It is a part of them. That team is a part of them. And that venue, that place is a part of them. And that feels like it's really the essential part of cementing a bond with your fans.
And the next thing is to really engage all those senses. You know, we think in multiple dimensions, not just digital. We hear a lot about the digital world, but we think about all the things, the physicality of an experience, the ways to sort of give you that sort of smell of the sport, or feeling something emotional. We like to look at all of those senses as in play as we're talking about sort of dimensionalizing these stories in ways that have not been thought about before in an unexpected way. And Tyler talked about this earlier, that quality and delivery matters. You know, these are huge investments making in terms of the money that you put into the stadium and the fan experience. And the audience they're expecting a great day out, and they're expecting a quality day, and everything that they're doing in their lives, they're looking at things, and we know this, trying to keep up with the 4K TV and the great experience that they're having down the street at a great restaurant. It's important that when you deliver it with the quality that's going to be best representative of your team. I look at some of the video of the new stadium in Minnesota, and it's just, you could see that wonderful quality that's coming through, and that has to come through also in the experiences that you create every single day. And the other thing is that we look at making things feel alive. Just because it's a non-game day experience doesn't mean that you can't have something that's alive, that's agile, that's changing, that feels like that day, it feels like the end of the match when you won the game. Joseph Campbell said, if you look at the next slide, he said, you know, people say that we're all seeking is the meaning of life, and he said, you know, I don't think that's what we're really seeking at all. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so we actually feel the rapture of life. And it's so true. It's so true, because when you're in a stadium and you're cheering for your team, you feel that rapture of life. You feel, you know, the 30,000 fans all feeling the same emotions at the same time. And there's no reason why we can't evoke those same emotions on a non-game day and a great experience. We need to tap into those same emotions. So those are some of the keys that we've found in telling a story. And when you do that, next slide, together they become powerful tools for creating experiences that matter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So just some key takeaways, and then we'll open up for some questions too. Next slide. You know, for us, and this is the key to everything that we do, is that there's one unifying theme. You know, you can really only tell one story. And every great brand, every great movie, every great TV show, and every great team is built around one unifying story, one unifying theme. Next slide. The next is that finding those stories that resonate, and those stories aren't necessarily just stories that are happening on the field or on the court, right? Those can be stories that are happening in the stands. I mean, one of my favorite moments in the Brewers show is when one of the players comes and just gives a gift to one of the girls sitting in the front row, and the emotion on her face when that moment happens is in some ways more powerful than any of the big highlight stuff that comes later in that show. Next slide. Are characters. You know, once you've figured out what that story is you want to tell, who are those characters who best support that story? And some of those characters will be on the field or on the court. Some of those characters will be in the stands. Some of those characters will be in the community. But who can you best utilize in order to tell that story you've decided you want to tell? Next slide. My favorite photo. Don't be afraid of conflict and drama. To me, the biggest mistake I see when I go to things like a Hall of Fame or a sports museum is that it's just the highlights. And highlight after highlight after highlight after highlight really decreases the impact and the power of those highlights. What gives those highlights meaning are the ups and downs of the story, are the pits where it feels like all is lost before the hero comes back and saves the day. As you know, as a season ticket holder here in LA for the Galaxy, I can tell you that as much as I hate them, the lows, the kind of drama of those 30,000 people moaning when something bad happens are just as, if not more, impactful than the highs. And then finally, if you've done that, to the next slide, that's when then you can really build to that resolution and celebration. You want to end on that high note. You want for your hero to have become a hero, for that team to have become a hero. You know, certainly when people walk out of the SELIG experience and they've been through that whole dramatic arc, but then end with Bud appearing as a hologram, speaking to them directly, there's this feeling kind of celebration of the fact that I'm a Brewers fan and that I'm connected to this story. And you definitely want to build to that kind of conclusion. Next slide. And then, you know, this is what Christian was talking about, this notion of emotionalizing the team story on a non-game day. I mean, most of you are in these venues that you're using, what, at best 80 nights a year for your team, and for some sports you're using them, you know, 6 to 10 times a year. But these are churches for people. They are places that your fans care about. And if you can emotionalize that team story, you can turn these venues into places that will attract people year-round, not just on game day.
Yeah, it becomes their home too.
And finally, the next slide. Great places and great people have great stories. I mean, every single one of your teams are full of great people doing great things in great places. And so the message you want to send in whatever you do is that journey to greatness begins here. That was actually a quote, I think, from the NSF last year.
Yes, it was great.
that Ben Mananas gave. But that's exactly right. That if you've done your job right, you've made fans feel like their journey to greatness, not just your journey to greatness, but their journey to greatness begins here. And I think that's it. So we can open it up to any questions.
That was really great, guys. I mean, I just want to speak for all of us here at the forum to just express how excited we are to be able to help share this story at the forum this year in Minneapolis. And as I mentioned earlier, if anyone is coming to the National Sports Forum this year, make sure you get a chance to go check out the BRC Theater. You know, it's one thing to discuss what you guys are doing, you know, through this webinar. It's a whole nother thing to experience it and actually be able to go through it. As I mentioned, you know, I was lucky enough to have that chance to be able to really sit in and feel a part of the experience. And I think one thing that really blew me away was the fact that going into it, I had absolutely no idea that Bud Selig had any ties to Milwaukee whatsoever. And coming out of it, I almost felt like an expert on the situation. So that being said, you know, I want to throw this question out to you guys. What, in your storytelling kind of planning and playbook, where do you take the fan knowledge of the story? Do you almost kind of play as if there's no knowledge whatsoever so that you can really kind of educate them on the process when creating that story, or are you trying to elevate an existing story as if the fans are experts to what's going on?
I mean, I would say that in a way we're trying to do both. We're trying to leave Easter eggs for the fans, diehard fans, so that they feel like they're getting, you know, key things that kind of affirm for them that devotion they already have, but not do that in such a way that it leaves out the casual fan or the person who doesn't know they're a fan yet. Yeah. You know, it was interesting when I was at FC Barcelona last month, they were saying, you know, so they get 1.6 million people a year on non-game days to the stadium, and they were saying, you know, one of the things that they recognize as this real opportunity is 75% of those people don't walk in Barca fans. They're there because their husband brought them, their boyfriend brought them, their brother brought them, and they have this opportunity to convert them to fans. And so I thought that was a very perceptive way to think about it. You know, when people come to Brewers games, some come because they're diehard Brewers fans, and some come because they were there or they just thought it would be fun, and then you have this captive audience there to turn those casual fans into really passionate fans.
Absolutely. And Tyler, I wanted to put this question out to you from a team mentality and team standpoint. I mean, I think we all understand that the fan experience needs to continue to be innovative in order to get the fans driven into the stadium, and, you know, ticket sales obviously being a huge motivator for this. Now that we live in the age of digital and, you know, TVs and everything like that, where it's a lot easier to bypass buying a ticket to go into the stadium and just stay home and watch it on your 70-inch screen TV. So what portion of, you know, creating that extra element to be able to get the fans into the stadium came into this process? And, you know, moving forward, I know that you guys mentioned that you're continuing to look at different partnership opportunities with people like BRC. You know, where does that element lie? You know, how important is it for you to continue to create these experiences that are going to give fans that extra motivation, where if they're on the fence of, you know, buying 1 or 2 tickets to the season, you know, where does that lie in your equation?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. When we're looking to create the experience here, we always refer to it as a fan entertainment experience, not a fan baseball experience. And you do have to set yourself apart from what the fan can see on TV. I mean, we are fortunate here to have a roof, which is, again, part of the fan experience and creating a great fan experience, because fans know that they're going to be comfortable. They're going to stay dry. It's going to be a reasonable temperature. So we have controlled something that a lot of people, I think, look at as a risk in going to a sporting event. Do I want to go out there? It's going to be too hot. It's going to be too cold. It's going to snow. It's going to rain. So whatever we can do to build that kind of certainty in, but then to also create so much more than just watching what's going on the field. We're undertaking a huge renovation this year, the largest project in Miller Park history, next to the BRC project. We are completely gutting our concessions. You know, the concessions that went in here in 2001 were terrific for that point in time, but they're very outdated at this point. I think everyone that's on the call that is with a sports team understands that it's so much more than just watching the game now, because with what you can see at home and knowing everything that you have as assets at your home, it's very, very tempting to stay there. And you have to create compelling reasons for people to come out to the ballpark that they can't take advantage of at their house.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, we're definitely looking forward to seeing what the Brewers come up with next. You know, we'll definitely stay tuned for that one. And for Brad and Christian, a question in from the audience here. What are your thoughts on creating a mobile experience that can travel from venue to venue? Can it still be impactful and successful?
Yeah, absolutely. You can do a lot of things in that can be impactful. There's a lot of things happening. You know, we do a lot of work with spirit brands, and we've seen some great activations that are quite mobile or pop up into specific communities. You know, taking over a space in sort of a storefront. For example, there was recently like a museum of ice cream that in New York that popped up for, I think it was like a 3-week run, and it was sold out within minutes. You know, and I think that there are opportunities to do, whether it's a pop-up or a mobile experience, that is a bit unexpected. And there's precedent going back for some time of doing those things. But the key there is to do something unexpected, something that engages the fans, but also provides a unique story opportunity where they can get involved, speaks to their heart, some of the same principles we talked about earlier.
And I would say, you know, the other thing that you want something that takes advantage of what to me is one of the unique things that sports brands really have, which is making things social. I mean, part of what I think makes the Brewers work so well is that you're actually sitting in that thing with 40 other people. You know, we've had companies approach us about wanting to do things in VR, and I think VR is super cool, but my problem with VR right now is that it's by myself. And that, you know, as Tyler said, obviously one of the challenges here is getting people to leave their house and come buy tickets, but one of the unique things you have that I can't do sitting on my couch is sit with 30,000 other people and go through an emotional journey together. And so finding ways to do that, even with something that's mobile, I think is going to be a key kind of, as you think about objectives, that one of your objectives should be, how do I maintain that feeling of this being a social event, something that I do as part of a community, not by myself.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. You know, I just wanted to kind of, before we wrap up here, I wanted to put out one question to each one of you guys. And I'm going to start with Brad and Christian here, which will be a great preview to the 2017 NSF and what you guys will be talking about. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what would be the next big thing to hit the sports industry?
Oh my.
Well, I think there's quite a few things. This is Christian. I'm very interested in what happens from a haptic standpoint. I mean, I know that's a little technology driven, but there is a lot happening in sports science that people are more and more interested in. I mean, we're Fitbit and we've got all of our stuff that we're already tracking our lives technologically. But I think what's interesting is how do we bring some of the emotions on the field and what players are feeling up into the stands. And that would be great to sort of almost feel what they're feeling at key times. So that's, I mean, that may be down the road, but I think that there's something interesting about how do we enhance through haptic technology.
It's interesting, just kind of building on that, Christian, but going another direction with that. I mean, to me, one of the most interesting things happening right now culturally is the sense of the, for lack of a better word, kind of the citizen athlete, that people who are not professional athletes are thinking of their bodies and themselves differently. You know, I'm a 48-year-old guy who does CrossFit, and I was not an athlete, and there's something happening culturally where people feel like they have a connection to what it is they're seeing on the field, and I'm very interested to see how to kind of utilize those connections and how they can turn things into really interesting fan experiences.
Well, thanks, guys. I mean, that's some great stuff. And Tyler, I'm going to wrap it up with you here. What, in your opinion, is next for the Brewers?
Hopefully building a more winning team. That's the ultimate goal. The next big thing that we are looking at is, as I touched on a little bit earlier, is the opportunity to completely overhaul our concessions, and really more than just concessions, it's the food and beverage program. So it's everything from building new stands to new items, partnering with some really key partners in the community that are restaurateurs, people that have brands that we can bring into the stadium that resonate with people who are foodies, as opposed to just slapping a hot dog or a piece of pizza in front of you. So I think one of the interesting trends that I'm sure you do other webinars on is just the idea of baseball and sports in general has become so analytical on the talent side, and what we're seeing now is that those analytics are stretching over onto the business side as well, and really sort of understanding all of the different things that you can about your fans' preferences and opportunities that are out there to increase your business and your offerings.
Well, I think that that brings us to the top of the hour. I just wanted to thank all three of you panelists here. Really great session, very insightful. Really excited for this year in Minneapolis to dive a little bit more into topics such as what's next with what BRC will be talking about, as well as seeing the Imagination Theater in full action and being able to experience the SELIG experience on site. So for everyone here on the call, I wanted to thank everyone for coming out and tuning in. Really appreciate your support and hope you guys got a lot out of this. If you liked what you saw, please feel free to check out the National Sports Forum Conference coming up in Minneapolis, St. Paul this upcoming February, the 12th to the 14th. We hope to see you all there. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day and great rest of the week, and looking forward to seeing you all in next month's webinar. Goodbye.
Bye.